Hey everyone, it's me, Jonathan from Motor Psychology. Welcome to the show or the channel. And if you're a new viewer, welcome. And if you're a returning viewer, welcome back. And once again, your support is recognized and greatly appreciated. So I'm actually on my way to do something with a C3 Corvette, hopefully fix the horn. But I wanted to do an introduction to changing the tires on a GSXR motorcycle, so a super sport motorcycle. And the video is going to show taking the wheels off the motorcycle, getting the tires off of the rims, reinstalling and balancing the tires, and then putting it back on the motorcycle and taking it out for a ride. So it's part of motor psychology, not my super main interest. My super main interest is on the C3 Corvettes, but nevertheless, we'll see how this tire change goes. So stick around. Thanks again for your support, and let's dive into this one. So this is the motorcycle in question. It's the Suzuki GSXR, and with the super wide tires, you can see how mine are getting worn out on the bottom. They're getting flat, so time to change those. I like to change them both at the same time. And coming over to the front is a little bit more worn, and it's more worn on what would be the left side when you're driving than the right side. So the reason that it wears that way is because the roads have a camber, so they're high in the middle and they slant off like that for drainage. So when you're riding a motorcycle and it's on the road like that and you're balancing, most of your balancing part, or the part where it's going to contract the road, is actually this part of the tire, because everything is on an angle due to the camber. That's why these tires wear out faster on one side than the other, typically the left. Other times I've had more even wear because I'm not doing as much flat highway driving. I'm doing more twists and turns, which will wear them out evenly. So from a safety point of view, this one needs to be changed, because I would hate to be going at the speeds that I go on this thing and for that tire to blow. So better get that one changed. And there's the rest of the motorcycle. So the first thing to do is going to raise this up on a couple lifts so that I can actually take the front wheel off and the back wheel off. So I'm going to get set up to do that. So I'm getting ready to change both the tires on this GSXR here. I'm going to be doing the front and the back, so that's removing the wheels for both and then taking the rubber off the rim, putting the new rubber back on, rebalancing, and then getting it back on the motorcycle. So that's my task for today. I have a few things that are going to help out. So I've got some lifters which will help me raise the motorcycle off the ground, and that's super important. Then I have some tools down here as well. So I've got a torque wrench for later on. I've got a breaker bar. I've got a couple tools that can be used for breaking the bead and getting the tire off, and these ones are called heavy duty bead pros. So it's an interesting way to do it. I also have a few other sockets that I'm going to have to use as well, and I'm using some jack stands, which all I use the jack stands for are to put the brake calipers, these Brembos, on the jack stand when I remove those from the wheel. So instead of them hanging down, I'm going to rest them on the jack stand. A couple other things I'm going to use here. So I'm going to use a variety of sockets. So this socket here is a 12 millimeter, and that is going to go on the back side of the Brembos here to remove the brake calipers. So that's 12 millimeter. You could use an extended socket or a shorter socket depending on what works for you. And I've got a 10 millimeter socket on here, and that just looses the pincher bolts here that attach to the axle. So those are important as well. For the main axle bolt, it's a 27 millimeter socket, and that's going to fit right in there like that. So this is the right side of the motorcycle. Here's the other side of the axle. I'm going to be using a spark plug remover. It's a 5/8 spark plug remover, but if you put this side in, that'll actually work as a nut to give you some positive control over the axle. And then a 1/2 inch bar or socket end, I'm going to use my breaker bar, will fit in there, and I'll show you how that works as well. So it's going to be the process of loosening this up, taking the brakes off, making sure that the motorcycle is raised up, and then once that is done, I'll be able to remove the tires. So a couple things to note is tires only go in one direction, so you want to make sure you put it on the right way. I want to identify this side of my tire as being the right side of the wheel. So when I go to put the tire on, I'm actually putting it on the right way, so that when I reinstall my wheel, I know that this is going to be on the right side and the direction is going to be proper for that. The rear wheel is going to be a similar function, but it's a little bit more difficult because you have to take it out of here and make sure that it is in alignment when it goes back. So you don't want to put your tire back on with an alignment issue. It has to be perfectly straight in alignment with the motorcycle, or it's not going to work properly. So I'll be raising it up. We'll be taking it off, taking the chain off of here, or leaving the chain on the bike, but taking the chain off the wheel. And once we have the wheels off, then it gets to the fun part of getting this rubber off this rim at home and putting the new rubber in there. But we'll take it step by step, and I'll show you how to do it. I've done this before, so it's not a big deal. I also will be balancing these tires with weights and a balancer, and I'll show you that setup when I get around to it. So those are my generic sports bike stands. One's for the front, which is this one down here, and that one's for the back. So pretty essential that you have those. These type of things are probably about $100 or so. I've had mine for about 10 years plus. So before I get started here, before I lift this, I want to crack the axle nut, and it's just easier when your motorcycle is on the ground. So you don't have to loosen it, you just crack it so you don't have to struggle with the torque after that. So with that, remember that was a 27 there. I'm going to put the socket on there, and I'm just going to use the breaker bar to crack the nut there. And it should be pretty easy just to crack it. Here we go. So on there pretty tight. I'll tell you what the torque values are. So it's cracked and ready to come out now. Another thing I wanted to point out, these pincher bolts here, do not loosen those until you get your bike up in the air. So they just help keep the axle pinched to the forks on both sides. So these can be loosened once you get your bike raised up. So we're going to move to raising the bike. I'm going to start with the back first. So in order to do this at home, you need to install these special knobs that you can put your lifter on. So they're pretty common to get. Most of the motorcycles have a hole behind here where you can thread those in. So that's what I would recommend. So when you lift your bike, you always do the back first and then move on to the front. So let's get the back up. I've already pre-arranged the distances between these so they fit on these lifters. And it's just a matter of lining them up and then pushing down, and the bike will lift up. So like that. And you just push back and the motorcycle goes up. Like so. Okay, we're going to lift the front of the bike up with the other lifter. So on my bike, these things here just lift up on the bottom of the fork. So it's just a matter of aligning them up. Like so. I'll lift it up and then I'll show you how I have them lined up. So once you think that you're in position, it's just a matter of pushing down and it's going to take the front right up. There, so now the motorcycle is completely up. So the motorcycle is completely up in the air. It's always a strange feeling when you have your motorcycle completely elevated and sitting on these stands. So you can see here where the fork is literally just resting on this thing, but it works, so that's pretty good. It looks like it's going to be a tight fit to get those pincher bolts out, but other than that, we're getting ready to be able to take the front wheel off. I always keep the motorcycle stand down just as a precaution, because if you raise it and then if you forget to put it down when you put your bike down, then your bike is going to fall over. And ask me how I know, because it's happened to me before. So I have these frame sliders on. They prevent the bike from actually hitting the ground. They'll hit the frame sliders. But nevertheless, it's not a fun thing to watch at all. So now I'm in position where I'm going to take the pincher bolts out. And once again, they were 10 millimeters. So they just unscrew this way. Once they loosen up, you can just take them off by hand. That's what they look like there. These ones look pretty much brand new. I'm going to put all my stuff in these magnetic trays, one for the front axle and one for the back, so I don't lose any parts. And the second one out. We're going to move over to the other side and take out the pincher bolts on that side. So we're down here on the right side. Just take these ones out. So both of the front pincher bolts on the right side are done. So we're now down in here where we're going to take off the monoblock Brembo. So this is one solid caliper, and the retaining bolts are right here, and they screw in or bolt into the front inverted fork. So next job is to get that done. It's a tight fit between taking these off and hitting the rim there. So what I'm going to do is put some painter's tape around the rim on this side to prevent it from getting damaged by the monoblock caliper. So I'm just putting it along the edge of the rim here. There we go. That should be enough to keep this block from hitting and damaging the rim. Scratching the paint off it is really what you're talking about. I'm not highly worried about that. I've got a few other scratches on there anyway, which I'm going to have to fix. So same thing on the right side. I've got the painter's tape on the rim there. I also put a loop of painter's tape on this side of the tire, on this disc. The reason why I'm putting that on is once this is off, I'll know that this came from the right side. So putting the tire on, like I said, I'll get it in the right direction and also reinstall that the same way. So now we're almost ready to take these off. All right, so we're going to take this first monoblock off, and once again, it's a 12 millimeter socket. Should be pretty straightforward getting these off. I'm going to need a little bit more leverage on this guy. Right, let's try it out with a bit more leverage here. There we go. And this one. There we go, perfect. Once they're loose, they become very loose really quickly. So just a matter of unscrewing these. Definitely make a different sound, that's for sure. I think they've gone through many heat cycles on the calipers, so take the top one out first. There we go. There's the caliper bolt right there. It's about 3.5 inches long, I guess. So you can feel the caliper getting loose here. Once the bolt goes out, you want to have positive control over your brake caliper, and my goal is to get it on here, so it's going to come out and tilt a little bit. So it's pretty tight fit. There we go. And I'm just going to rest it on here like so. It's also a good opportunity to check out your brake pads as well. Let's have a look at these. So the brake pads are okay. They're not that thick when you get them brand new, but I could probably order a new set and get them. So when I'm looking at this, even though you can't split it, it looks very similar to the Corvette calipers as far as being a big unit monoblock, although the Corvettes are split, but it's kind of cool. So we're on the right side, same thing, loosen these, kind of tilt that out, and then put it on the jack stand. All right, those are pretty loose. Let's take these off. One bolt out. And we'll take this one out and positive control over this guy. Slide it out of the disc here. There we go, and then just rest it on here. There we go. So the caliper is off both sides, and now we're getting ready to take the axle off and get this front wheel out. So the next step is going to be taking off the axle nut, which is this guy right here. And also on the other side, remember I told you about this indent down there? That's where I'm going to put the spark plug thing in reverse, and that just gives me positive control. So other things to keep in mind is the axle goes out that way, so from the left to the right, as if you're riding the motorcycle. So first thing to do is get that nut off. So a couple things here. You've got your nut that needs to come off here on the axle, and then on the other side, on this side, we have the open part of the axle where that spark plug thing will go in. So let's put that in here. It just helps you get positive control of your axle when you move it out. So the axle itself goes from this side out to the right side. So I'm looking at this as the left side, as if you're riding the motorcycle. Once the bolt is off, the axle is going to come out on that side. So first things first, let's get the bolt off. All right. As you can see, unfortunately, my socket's not going to fit in there properly, so I've got an open-ended crescent wrench. It's coming off nicely here. That's the axle nut. Looks in great shape still. Put it with the rest. Now time to get that axle out and take this tire off. So the tool that works best for me seems to be the breaker bar. It fits in here and you can actually get some torque on it. So let's try that out. Gives me the room I need as well. Pull that out. I just want to tap this out with a soft mallet. So I'm using one of these hammers here that has a really soft tip. Just gently tap that out. So I've got it flush on that end, then I'll go around the other side and pull it out, holding onto the wheel so that it doesn't drop dramatically. I'm going to use the end of a small screwdriver, the plastic end, just to fit in the axle hole as I tap that out. Just placing a roll of shop towel underneath here to keep the tire from dropping all the way to the floor. Usually works pretty well. Let's continue. All right, the axle is out. You just pull it out. There's the axle here. I'll clean that up again before putting it back in. It's just a big hollow piece of metal, but it is what it is. All right, we're good to pull this wheel and tire out right now. It's just about gently bringing it forward and out. Almost there. Just need to clear a few things. Very tight fit between the tire and the fender and these things and the brakes. So a little bit of finesse moving around. There we go. And that's it. Your tire is out of the motorcycle. So here we are. The entire front of the bike is resting on the forks. And here's where the axle goes through for the tire. So that's pretty good. That's one step done. So I'm getting ready to take this tire off. I'm going to be using these things. They're called Bead Pros, and it should allow you to break the bead on the tire. And it's a good idea to lubricate up the rubber. And sometimes I use Windex, but I'm going to try this stuff here. It's called Tire Slick, and it's the same thing. So I'm going to give that a try. So before doing that, I'm going to let the air out of the tire. So there's not a whole lot of air in here, so it didn't take too much to get the air out. So now we've got a tire that I left out in the sun for about an hour. It's as warm as possible, so it shouldn't be too hard to get the bead off. So I'm going to put down some Tire Slick. And then just work it around the bead area. Like I said, you can use Windex, which is pretty good, or try some of this. For me, the hardest part is always getting these things on and off, so I'm trying something hopefully pretty slippery. I've got it down on a padded surface here. With these ones, this part goes in first, and then the bead breaker part tucks in, and then you crack it that way, and you work your way around the rim. So let's try that out. So it's just a matter of getting this thing in. Put a little bit of lubrication on this. Should go right in, no problem. There we go. Got the bead broken on this side, finally. All right, that side is done. And once again, it's the same thing for this side. Use some of this stuff. So once again, you grab this one and you slide it in as close up to the rim as you can. And then this gives you the leverage to break the bead. So let's try it again. The first one's a little bit difficult to get it all the way in. There we go. All right, this bead is broken. Just go around it and push this side off. So we got the bead broken on both sides, and now we have to elevate it off the rim. So I'm going to use these rim protectors. Rim shields, they help when you try and elevate the tire out with the tire irons. So I'll show you how they work. I've also got a few extra ones. Should be able to get this off with 2 spoons, but if it's tighter, I'll need 3, and I'll need to use another one of these things. So these just go on here. Those are there to protect your rim as you go around with the spoons, and I'm going to do that now. So you just use the other side of the tire iron. You get underneath it, and usually with smaller tires, it's a little bit more difficult to get these things out. To get them out and on, I would say. There we go, a little bit of pressure there. Hopefully we can get this guy out. There we go. And you keep working yourself around the rim here. Comes around. This is where I'm going to use another spoon and another protector. This is another version that you can use if you want. Once again, they just clip on and just keep on going around. and it's slowly but surely coming off. There we go. There's one side off. All right, the next step is getting the other side of the tire off. And we're going to use the rim protectors for this. So this side has to come off the other side of the rim. So what you do is you come at it from this side here and stick your rim protectors in like so. All right, I don't know if you can see it, but the blue rim protector is up there, and then you just use a tire iron to pop it out. So hopefully you only have to do this in one area. So you get it under like that, and then just lift it over like so. So now it's on this side of the rim. You should be able to just get a little bit of weight on it and peel some of it off. There we go. And finally, we've got the old tire off. So super worn out. Here's a view of the motorcycle tires that I'm putting on. This one's the front tire. Size-wise, it is a Bridgestone Battle Axe S21. The number is 12070 ZR17MC. So 58 wide. This is specially fitted, or the size that you need for a Suzuki GSXR or Gixxer. So that's the front tire. It's brand new. All right, I have my new tire here that I showed you earlier in the video. It's warmed up nicely. I'm going to leave the stickers on it until I've got it installed. And once again, you want to lubricate up the bead of here, and I'm going to put some of that slick on there as well. So keeping in mind that this also has the direction of rotation as well, which is indicated on the tire, and this one wants to go that way. So that's the direction of rotation on here. And let's see if I can find it on this one here. So yeah, the direction of rotation is this way. So remember, I made this one the right side here with the tape. So I know that's on the right side. So as far as the tire is concerned, this way, where's the direction here? This way is going that way. So that is the wrong way in, because you know that that's going to turn that way. So I have to flip it over this way. So this is the direction of rotation, which is perfect. So yeah, let's get this thing ready to go. So you want to avoid getting the tire slick inside your rim. You just want it on the outside, and that's it. So I'm going to apply it with a shop towel to both the rim here. It's pretty good. And also to this side of the tire, number one. So as mentioned, you need to know where that yellow dot is, or some sort of dot. That is the light part of the tire, and they put it over the valve stem because that's heavier than anywhere else on the rim. So you've got a light part and a heavier part, so hopefully that will balance out as much as possible. So you just kind of line it up like that. My valve stem is right here, and then you start putting this thing on. And this is a little bit of a manual task, I would say. There we go. Sometimes you can get it all on just by using your body weight, but these smaller tires are tougher. That is about as far as that one wants to go. So I'm going to use my rim protectors and just put the other side in. All right, so up close you can see what's going on here. Getting the inside bead in there, got the yellow part lined up with the valve stem, and just got to work the rest of that bead in, and then the outside bead should be good to go. All right, let's get this thing done. Just putting a little bit more of that lube on the rim as I work my way around. There we go. Take these guys out. Easier said than done. So there's half of it on, and getting there. All right, time to get set up for this tire here. Line that up, and you want to let me just get some lube on here again. It's probably the most important part, is keeping these things lubricated. All right, the goal, let's get this one in. So I'm going to use some body weight here. Hopefully can pry this one in. Yep. This is probably one of the more trickier parts. So I've got this side in. Now my challenge is to get this side in. So this is where these come back in handy. So you got to slide these things back in place. Put them as far down as I can here. All right, so it's the same thing. Got to use these spoons here, and then if you can kind of get them going both at the same time, that's a bonus. Oops. Let's make sure this guy is on here properly. All right, so keeping my weight on here. Now I'm gonna simultaneously do both of these, and then just move my knees up along the tire as I progress. Now it's getting about as tight as you'd ever want to see it. So try these guys here. All right, we finally got that on. It was a little bit of a stickler on there. I'll try and show you more in the back tire. But now we're going to fill it up with air. The little valve is down there, so we're going to fill it up, and then the tire will get seated on the rim properly. It's not a user-friendly place to do it. All right, so you may hear a pop as I do it. Don't know when the pop's going to happen, but when you hear 2 pops, you know the beads are in. There's one. Okay, now there was 1 pop, and we're going to hear another one in a sec. A little bit more air. It's coming from there. The bead will pop in place. We hope. Woo! You never know when it's going to happen, but that's how you put the tire on. So the next step that I need to do with this is I've got to balance it. I'm going to do that on the bench later on, and it's got some weights on it already. I'll take the weights off, and then I'll rebalance it on the workbench, and then this will be ready to be installed. Okay, we're at the stage with the front tire where I'm going to put it on this balance stand and balance the tire, put on some new weights if required. So this comes flat in a box, and you just have to spread those apart and build it so that it looks like that. So I'm going to do that right now. All right, so we'll get rid of this thing for now. Put this together. So you just have to take this thing out here. Take that out. Open the legs. Put this back in. So now you have an axle to put your tire on, and this is the part that will pinch it in, and you use an Allen key for that. So to put the tire on, once you get it on, you want to squeeze these as close as possible to the axle to hold it nice and firm. Taking the front tire here, lining it up like so. This part here has like an Allen key on there. Push this in, and because it's conical shape, it's going to force this into a good position here. And you want to put it as far in as you absolutely can, and then just tighten it up. And that is your basic setup. So once things are good to go, we can take this off here. That's the tire again. And then what you want to do is gently spin this. So we're looking for the low point. So you don't want to spin it very fast, just really lightly and let it settle down. Give it a little bit more of a spin here. Try it one more time. There we go. It seems to be settling in somewhere. One more. There we go. So this is coming up as the heaviest spot. So you want to mark your tire here with either a tire marker or a piece of tape or something like that. So this is the lightest part of the tire, and what you want to do is start putting weights on it just incrementally. So I have a whole bunch of weights here. They're self-adhesive steel wheel weights. They come in adhesive strips, and they are all 1/4 ounce as far as the weight. So I wouldn't imagine I'm going to need much. So once you have your light spot, you want to put it to either 3 o'clock or 9 o'clock. It doesn't really matter. And you can see how it wants to go back up there. So I'm going to stick a weight in there. First, I'm going to clean it with some alcohol. So I know I'm going to be putting the weights down here somewhere. So I just use some rubbing alcohol just to get any stuff off the rim. What we're looking at here is putting a weight in this area right there. So let's put one and see if that makes a difference. So I've now got 3 on here, and it's looking pretty close there. It still wants to ride up a little bit, so you can see the 3 in there, and I'm going to place one more. I'll put it up here, see if that makes a difference. Cut one of these, another one out here, and take the backing off of it, and let's stick it right up here. So there's about an ounce right there. So 4 1/4 inch, there's an ounce. They're nice and flat, low profile. Let's check that out now. So with that, it is pretty good. I'm going to try it on, line it up again. I'm going to say that's pretty good. I'll make my final adjustments while riding it. So if it is a little bit off balance on the heavy side, I'll take one of these off. So you can see the weights there. It's pretty much balanced. It may be a little bit heavy, but really hard to determine. So if I put it up here, it kind of stays, kind of goes down a little bit. Now this tire is ready to go back on the motorcycle, and I have to take the other one off and repeat for the back one. So we're back in the garage here. I'm getting ready to put that wheel back on there. And remember, I put the tape on the right side, so I know what side that's on. And it's just going to slide in here. The axle's going to go back in, tighten it up, do the pincher bolts, which you didn't actually have to take completely out if you didn't want to. Then I'll put the brakes on and then torque them, and I'll give you the torque values as I do that. So let's get ready to put this tire back on here. So it's really just the reverse of what we did. So here's the big front axle that goes in from that side. All right. This should just make its way back up here without too many difficulties. Almost there. There we go. Get this lined up. And this one. There we go. Just get my soft hammer here and tap the axle through. That's it. There's the tire on. There we go. So looks to spin pretty good. So the next thing to do before you put in the pincher bolts, or bolts that hold the axle in place, is it's time to put this on here. I'm not going to torque it right now, but I'm going to do it pretty tight. I might be able to torque it as well, so just check that out. So I'm using this as a general guide. It's a user's manual for this GSX-R. Following it loosely, it shows you the process. This is a pretty routine type of thing as far as taking the wheels on and off. So following it in reverse to put them back on. So the next step is to torque that in before you put in the pinching bolts. So I just got to find the torque specifications. After this, we'll be moving on to the rear wheel. So for my bike here, I've got the torque values. So for the front, it's 72.5 pounds for the front main axle. And then for the holder, or the tightening bolts, axle holder bolts or pincher bolts, they are at 16.5 foot-pounds. And then for the caliper mounting bolts, they are at 28 foot-pounds. So I'm going to get ready and do that. So starting off first with the axle bolt, starting at the axle bolt at 72.5 foot-pounds. All right, I've got the torque wrench set up at 72.5 foot-pounds, and just time to torque this thing in, if I can get it to fit here. I'm gonna need an extension. Just gonna put these bolts in here loosely. I'm going to put my calipers on both sides, then I'm going to lower the bike and torque the front bolt and the pincher bolts. Right now I can't get into it because this thing is in the way, so not a big deal. So getting ready to put this monoblock on there, the Brembo. One thing that you have to remember not to do is when you take that off, don't depress your brake and squeeze the calipers together, or it's going to be very difficult to get them apart. So leave them apart and it should go on okay, that is. So I have a little gap in there that this ought to make it in no problem. There we go. It's as simple as sliding it on like that, sticking the bolts in. Sticking that one in. And once again, these were 12 millimeters. Tighten these up here. Get rid of the jack stand. That's a lot of wrenching to get this thing on. All right, that's good for now. All right, we're on the right side. I can take off this tape here. That's off, thing lined up. So once again, you just make sure that your caliper is spread enough. There's been no change since I took it off, and then carefully slide it in. There we go. little bit tricky getting it on the disc, but once it's on, it's really easy to do. Tighten these guys up. All right, the brakes are done. I'm just going to lower the front wheel and torque it in. So the back of the bike is still up. I'm going to lower the front very carefully. Just to give myself a little bit of room to torque. Got my torque wrench here and ready to go. Should be pretty much there. There we go. So that's torqued. Now I can put in the bolts there. So I'm using a much smaller torque wrench with different gradients. So it was only 16.5 foot-pounds. 15 here plus 1.5 is 16.5 pounds. This one has a 10 millimeter socket for that. So these guys here, there we go. That one's torqued up. That one, so they're both torqued. And repeat for the other side. Now that's torqued in. As is that one. Perfect. So they're both torqued to the torque values. All right, same scenario, smaller torque bar. This is 28 foot-pounds just for the caliper bolts. So I'm going to do that right now. That one's already in there. And that's torqued as well. So I'll check these later on, but for now they're torqued to 28 foot-pounds, and I'll do the other side as well. And we're just going to torque these guys up to the 28. There we go. So they're both torqued to 28. So everything is good to go on the front tire now. The brakes are in, it's torqued. The pincher bolts are torqued, and also the axle is in and torqued. So this side is good to go. Now we have to move on to the rear. All right, we're down here to take off the rear wheel, and it's not quite as complicated as the other one. The caliper, which is on the right side, is also attached through the axle, so that's not a really big deal. That completes part one of what's going to be a part two video. Part two is going to show basically the same thing, but with all the differences for the rear tire. So it's already filmed. I'm currently editing it, and it may be available to watch as you're watching this one as well. So that's coming up really, really soon for part two. So once again, in this video, it was fairly detailed, showing all the steps that you need to take in order to get this job done. I took my time to try and show everything so that anyone out there, if they want to follow these steps, their chances of success of getting their tires off the motorcycle, tires off the rims, back on and rebalanced and reinstalled on the motorcycle is a lot more possible. That's why this video details all that content. So in the next video, more of the same, so look forward to seeing that one. And I'm also working, as always, on C3 Corvette videos. So thanks so much for your support, and we'll catch you right back here at Motorpsychology next time.